This is In Character. I'm your host, Gerard Robinson, Vice President for Education at the Advanced Studies in Culture Foundation. Hello, everyone. My name is Gerard Robinson, and welcome back to another session of In Character. As you know, I have a group meeting with people to talk shop about a number of areas. Recently, I had a conversation about SEAs or state education agencies or state groups who work with people. And I'm joined with Karen, who was a part of that conversation. Welcome back.
Thank you, Gerard. Good to be back.
So one of the things we discussed was almost if you had a magic wand, what would you do differently or what would you do better? And one of the things that we discussed were rails. And I'll let you take it from here and talk about why it matters if they interact with you. And most people, in fact, probably have no idea what a rail is. So take it from here.
Thank you, Gerard. In part of my work and very important work with WestEd, we partner significantly with our regional educational laboratories. And in our current role, that is the Southwest Regional Educational Laboratory that helps support the Bureau of Indian Education, the state of Oklahoma, and the state of New Mexico. But also in our prior West Comprehensive Center work, just to give some examples, we work very closely with REL West in helping support Arizona in the development of a support structure for principal supervisors in order to better support principals in their critical role in leading their schools. So, they would assist us in bringing out some research tied to best practices of both principals and principal supervisors that helps inform the SEA all the way down to the district level as to what might work best. So, that is one example. Another REL example that assisted us recently with the New Mexico Public Education Department in the implementation of their Community Schools Initiative, which encompasses supporting 32 grantees across the state. In a virtual convening of those grantees, we did an overview, or I should say the REL West did a great overview of what is required in ESSA tied to the four different tiers of evidence-based practices and programs. And then as a follow-up, did a deeper dive with those same grantees as to how that might look with the implementation of their community school strategy tied to evidence-based practices aligned with the whole continuous improvement cycle. So those are a couple of examples. And I'll tell you, we couldn't do a lot of our work with our SCAs without that collaboration of the regional educational laboratories. And I'm hoping with that magic wand, Gerard, that you asked in the panel, that the Biden administration and the U.S. Department of Education's new leadership really has a good understanding of the importance of the RELs in their work with us as comprehensive centers across the United States that really help prioritize and support our states in their important work.
My first introduction to REL was in 1993. I was then working for a state senator in Sacramento, and Rest representative had come to the state capitol to give a presentation. And it was great. She was a PhD. She talked about options that we had, what we could do, how we could utilize the REL. And I was like, this is not bad. And of course, in different lives, I had a chance to work with them. You mentioned Bureau of Indian Affairs. Some of us know some things about it. Very few of us do. There's conversations now about who's going to be the new leader. And as a result of that, it's raised the profile of what they do and don't do. Talk to us about the Bureau and your work with the Bureau.
Yeah, thank you, Gerard. In our work with the Bureau of Indian Education, we have been assisting Bureau of Indian Ed Executive Director Tony Dearman with some of his key priorities Part of that includes implementation of their strategic direction goals and alignment of those goals specifically with some deeper dive work that we are supporting them in. So, for example, our current role includes assisting their supplemental education program staff, which oversees and helps schools, the 184 BIE schools, utilize their federal entitlement dollars as well as discretionary grant dollars, and how best that those should be monitored, what data should be collected in reporting, and just helping them restructure and identify some good processes in place that overlap with special education and IDEA implementation. Because the two, if you want to call them departments, work very closely together as one division in the Bureau. And so we're helping them identify where are their overlaps in current processes and structures so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel, but also ensure that there's fidelity in implementation and accountability tied to the use of those funds and reporting of those funds.
Thank you. And I apologize. I said Bureau of Indian Affairs is Bureau, BIE.
Correct. Correct.
Last point for you. So West Ed has a lot of work and a lot of partnerships. I'm in Charlottesville, so I'm outside of your region, but we just opened up schools for the first time in a year. And maybe some of the schools in your area are doing the same.
Oh, yes.
Talk to us about how that's going and the kind of support you provide to schools in your area.
Well, I had mentioned a little briefly on the panel that recently we supported West Ed's work with our comprehensive centers. There's 4 of them across the United States. And the states requested help in terms of what are the requirements, or how are the funds for ESSER 2 going to be flowing? How can those funds be spent? And also part of that discussion included how they might utilize those funds in the reopening of schools, specifically tied to accelerating learning for students. So that's where summer school started coming up, best practices tied to tutoring, particularly tied to the report done by NPR and Robert Slavin's work. Oh, yeah. So, they want to ensure that they're being rigorous and thinking a little bit more out of the box as an opportunity for reopening their schools, and also tied to how best to assess learning gaps and promote the best practices tied to supporting not only the students, but the teachers who teach them.
Which we often have to clap for all the hard work they're doing.
Yeah, and tied to that, Gerard, another repeating theme with the reopening of schools is the great need for supporting social and emotional well-being of not only the students, but also think of the Bureau of Indian Education and their 184 schools that span over 23 states. The need to for principals, school leaders to assess what are the fears of returning back to school. How many of them have lost staff members of those schools to COVID, and families have lost family members. And so supporting staff and also the school leaders with well-being supports. And that's where we're so excited and pleased that West Ed houses the National Center for Improving Social and Emotional Learning and School Safety. And we plan on partnering with that center to help provide those supports to our states.
Well, thanks for bringing that up, because I know families, teachers, educators, and lawmakers are looking for ways to partner. And guess what? You already have something that is in the works. So good to hear that. Well, Karen, thank you so much for carving out time to do a deeper dive on some of the things we talked about in our group session. Keep up the good work and look forward to future conversations.
Oh, I look forward to future conversations and work with you too, Gerard. Thank you so very much.
Take care.
You too.